Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. Being flexible, always being flexible with your training. I think that's the number one thing with training in general, is just learn to be flexible, because not every day is going to be a great day. And it may not be the best of circumstances. The gym might be really cold. The gym might be really hot. You might not be feeling so great. Someone might be, in your rack using
that sucks.
Right? Using your rack, your equipment. So that can throw you off too. And
that sounds like an excellent transition to today's topic.
I think so. Yeah. So we thought today would be a good day to talk about barbell training, or just training the older athlete. I like to use the word athlete. Sully uses that, right? Master's athlete. And there's somebody made some comment to him recently about, how can you call these people athletes? They're old. And I can't remember what his comeback was.
That sounds a little ageist.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, it was a good comeback. And, they're training for life. I think that the older you get, the more of an athlete you become, because now your goal is to be, still become that useful person as you age.
Well, and remain independent. Yes. Not just be alive, but be independent. Yes. And vital and enjoying yourself and capable.
Yes. And I think that so by kind of dismissing that term athlete to only being, people who compete in sports is, it's kind of a throwaway. I think that, the older we get, the more our lives, change and become even more enriched, because now, if we're retired, we get to do more, we get to see more, we get to possibly travel more, we get to volunteer for things that we maybe didn't have a chance to because we're working. So our lives become much fuller, and exercise and strength training plays a big role in that, in order to live and be and do what we want to do now. I see that with my mom when she comes to train, and Susan and Deb, Jay's mom and her friend, they were there today training. And they work hard. And they constantly tell me how much they need to do this. That's a big thing. It's like when they don't do it, they realize how much their life does need it.
But see, I think what you're describing there too is like an essential quality of an athlete, and that's a level of dedication.
Absolutely.
And so to dismiss an older population's, oh, you're not an athlete. There's a lot of, really important just attributes that someone has that fit that definition.
Yes, and I think that just the person isn't quite getting where Sully is going with that term, and what embodies that person, the whole person, what an athlete truly is. It's not just the sports athlete that we see, on the football field
I guess in that case, you're thinking the person is probably thinking athlete as someone who participates in some kind of competition, not necessarily recognizing that there are ways that you can compete with yourself. Absolutely. To be a better version of yourself. Absolutely. One day than you were the previous day. And that kind of attitude, that kind of mindset where you're trying to continually improve or train for a particular outcome.
So Diego, when I told him that we were going to do a podcast on training the older athlete, he started a quote from Tolstoy. Now, the reason he quoted from Tolstoy is because I said, yeah, so the podcast is going to be training the older athlete, the older client. I said, and it's going to go like this. So how do you train the older athlete? How do you train the older client? Well, you train in the same way you train all your other clients. The end. So there is, so his quote was, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And it's from Anna Karenina. And, you know, I don't train and you don't train your older clients. When we say older, I'm thinking 50 plus, 60 plus, right? 70s. I don't train them any differently than my other clients, my younger clients.
No.
Right? The program is the same with the exception of, you know, and obviously there are modifications that we make,
yeah. But I mean, it's like, you're right there. I mean, I can think of, you know, when you're talking about, oh, you're going to be working with an older athlete today, you might have some ideas, or an individual might have some ideas about what that might mean, or stereotypes about that. Mm-hmm. But the things that you encounter as a coach when you're working with an older athlete might be, you know, less overall strength or muscle mass. I've seen that in plenty of 20 and 30-year-olds.
Plenty.
You might think about difficulty with range of motion, or lingering effects from injuries from their youth. Mm-hmm. You see that with younger clients too. Mm-hmm. So it's, in a lot of ways, not any different from training anyone.
No, at least that's our mindset, right? And that's the mindset of many of the coaches that we respect and follow. But that's not the mindset of all trainers. So I think that, you know, when we train our clients, when our clients come into us, you know, we know what we're going to teach them. We're going to teach them how to squat. We're going to teach them how to deadlift. If they can bench, right? If they don't have any issues with their shoulders, we're going to teach them how to bench. If they don't have any issues with mobility in their shoulders, we may be able to press overhead.
Or some
variation of, right? So you and I both have that mindset already. You're here to get stronger. We get stronger by doing X, Y, and Z, and then we modify those exercises if we can't start with that, you know, the exercise that we want to start with. But that applies to my younger clients too. I mean, how many times have I put a box under them, or started younger 20-some-year-olds with a goblet squat or just a body weight squat?
Yeah. And I think that, you know, like what you're describing is like, we start an older athlete the same way that we would a younger athlete. We've got the lifts that they're going to do in mind, and we find what someone can do. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times that's a really, like, it's just a more positive approach that a lot of older athletes really appreciate. They might be coming into this thinking like, oh, I can't do this anymore, or my last trainer told me I shouldn't. I mean, and you know, you maybe are going to be a little choosier about exercises. You're not going to throw like 100 burpees at somebody in their 70s or something, but what sense would that make really anyway?
Right.
So the focus always being on what you can do, and awareness of your body and building strength and where you are in space is like super beneficial. Translates over into people's out of gym life in ways that are really profound and important for older individuals.
Well, because I think, I mean, as we get older, you know, you learn that by age 30, 35, we start to lose muscle mass. So we're trying to prevent that, even, you know, as quickly as we can, right? So by the time someone comes to us and they're in their 60s and they haven't been training, they don't have much muscle mass. But that doesn't mean that we can't put muscle mass on. We can't start to train that body and get them stronger and build muscle. We can. It's never too late to start. You just have to start. So when that older person comes, our goal is to, use as much muscle mass as we can, right? To build that strength, to build some muscle, so that they can get stronger, so that their balance gets better, so that if they do trip and fall, they don't hurt themselves or break a hip. I mean, their bones will get stronger. So we're thinking about the whole person and their whole body and what they're doing when they leave the gym. Like, what is their life like outside the gym? Do they live alone? Are they active? How active are they? Do they want to become more active? Is that why they're here? So there's a lot that I think about when someone older comes to me.
So when you have an older client come in and there's the goal of going through like the 4 main lifts, the same as with any other individual who comes to you to train, what are some of the modifications that you find you use most often with older trainees?
It depends on the person. I've definitely had a couple clients in their 70s who had to learn how to squat to sit to a box or sit to a chair. So we have many different plyo boxes of different heights, right? 12 inches, 18 inches. 18 inches is about the chair, right? The height of a chair. So we may start there, just teaching them how to use their hips, how to sit back and push their knees out, and then how to rock forward and drive up out of the chair, off the box with using their hips. So just learning how to squat. Mm-hmm. And that was very exciting to one of my clients who unfortunately came right before the lockdown. So we only had 2 sessions, but she was very excited on that first day. You know, she's very petite. So she's real small. And she does yoga and she does, likes to kind of, garden, but she really had very little body awareness of how to squat, how to hinge, how to move. So we just learned how to squat. We kind of learned how to sit to a box and stand. She loved that. She thought that was just brilliant. Her knees didn't bother her. Her knees had always bothered her when she was working with physical therapists. And now her knees didn't bother her because she was learning correctly how to push her knees out and how to use her hips in a squat. So that was exciting to her. She could overhead press, but we actually couldn't use the 10, even my 10-pound bar. So we just pressed a dowel. But she could overhead press. So she learned how to press. And then with a deadlift, she deadlifted beautifully. We got into a beautiful position and she loved that. So there was no modification there with her deadlift, but definitely with her squat was just squatting to a box. And then her press, we had to use a dowel. And it was simply just to kind of show her the movement, how to get the arms overhead and how to get the arms back down.
So those are things you're describing that really pretty much would affect an under-muscled younger individual as well.
Absolutely. It's the first thing we do, right? The first thing I do is with anybody who comes and starts the barbell program with us is I teach them how to squat, press, and deadlift. Mm-hmm. So it was going to be no different with any of my older clients. If I had a client who wasn't as frail, as weak, she or he may have put a bar on their back. I may have had them start with a bar. And I did that with my mom. She was able to squat with a bar. Susan Jay's mom was able to start with a bar, a light bar, but she was able to squat with a bar. So it really depends on the person, but everyone's that's just hands down for my 20-year-olds, my 30-year-olds, my 40-year-olds. I have plenty of those who can't start with a bar and they start with a box squat or maybe a goblet squat, holding on to a dumbbell, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess like you're talking about, you need to have a facility that has the proper equipment.
Yes.
Right. And I remember the story you talked about where you, who went with you? Was it Pauline went with you to the TV station and did a little bit on strength training? And just in general, I think there's a lot of people out there who do not understand that not every bar weighs the same. And so I loved the story you're talking about going into the station and the people are like, oh my God, you had the 15-pound bar with the 10-pound bumper plates and it's all set up like that. And you're walking in carrying it in one hand and people are looking at you like you're some kind of, I don't know, Incredible Hulk. And then Pauline deadlifts it and they're all, flabbergasted. And Pauline was embarrassed because it was so much lighter than her usual deadlift.
She said she almost yanked it with her arms because she got set in a position. It was like, oh, crap.
It was so much lighter than she was used to that she almost fell over backwards or something. But yeah, it's just funny. So if you have the proper equipment, and that's going to be lighter weight bars. And sometimes that's going to be whatever, a football bar, safety bar, or whatever, so that you can do different grips if shoulder mobility is an issue. But I got a guy now who's I don't know, in his mid-30s, I think. Mm-hmm. And he's got a shoulder mobility issue where he's basically doing an improvised safety bar squat until he gets his shoulder rehabbed a little bit. Like, that's not uncommon in a younger population either. But yeah, I mean, I guess the thing I see more with older populations, squat, nothing really different. Deadlift, nothing really different. Either one of those lifts, depending on a person's strength when they're starting out, or they're just, you know, a number of different factors. You might have to raise the deadlift up. You might have to provide a box for the squat to begin with. That's not uncommon in various age ranges. I think the thing that I see more with older populations is shoulder mobility issues. And so in those cases where you've got an individual who's not really quite able to do the overhead press with the shrug, I mean, it's, you know, it's going to be something close to that. Maybe it may not be centered over the shoulder joint in the way that we would like. But that's going to be better than not pressing at all. You might have somebody who does a landmine press to begin with. Maybe the strength isn't the issue so much as the range of motion. So there's ways to address that as well. But the answer is never, oh, you can't do that. Or, I mean, rarely is it, no, you can't do that.
No. And I've been training Claire. She's 60. She has cerebral palsy. And Claire started working with me in 2018, August of 2018, and made incredible progress. I mean, it's astounding how much stronger she got. And I think that was when she had her ankle surgery this past September. She had some complications with it. So she's having some pain right now after a few months after. But overall, her bone density is good. The doctor said her bone density is great. It's in the left ankle that is the cerebral, and her cerebral palsy affects her on her left side. So I've been training her at home, and in the beginning, she hadn't done anything for about 2 months. So she had to, and her ankle was really bothering her, and she hadn't seen the bone doctor yet. So we didn't want to do any squats or deadlifts, anything standing until she was, you know, she had seen her doctor. So we did a lot of upper body work. We did rows and dumbbell presses and, you know, lateral raises. And because I'd never worked with Claire just seated before, we'd always done squats and deadlifts. I was like, okay, well, maybe there's some other exercises I can do with her. Let me pull up Silver Sneaker. And I did that. I pulled it up because I know that that's a class for seniors that is seated, right? You're seated the whole time in a chair, basically.
Yeah.
And I pulled up a few videos to see if there were other exercises that I wasn't doing. And there weren't. I was pretty much doing them all. But I'm watching these videos, Rebecca, and my heart sunk. I'm just looking at these individuals, and I just thought to myself, none of them should be sitting in a chair doing this. They're all able-bodied people who have so much more ability than they have been told that they have. And it was very depressing. I'll have to say that it was very depressing to watch these videos. And the instructor at the front is very excited and doing her lateral raises and doing her knee marches and talking about, now we're going to the store. Now you're picking up your grocery bag. And I'm watching it. I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching these videos to help a woman who has cerebral palsy, who can do everything, who can deadlift and squat and press and bench. But right now she's playing it safe because she hasn't seen her doctor yet. So we're not, and I want to be mindful of that and not push her. But once she saw her doctor, we've been doing squats and deadlifts,
Well, but this is interesting to me too, because I think that ties in very well with the comment that Sully got about, what do you mean you're calling these people athletes?
Yeah.
Like, there is an unfortunate mindset that, as Sully calls it, the sick and aging phenotype, is the expectation. And it's unfortunately not it's the expectation of many people. So not just the trainer that they might encounter at a gym who says, well, you need to sit down to exercise. It's not safe for you to stand up with a bar on your back. You might fall over. Well, okay. If you're never training strength while actually using it in the ways that you're going to be forced to use it in the real world, how safe is that? So it's not only the trainers though, but then people buy into that too. And they think, oh, I'm not able to do something, or I don't want to try that because, they've heard from whatever sources that it's not safe, or they view it as not appropriate for someone of their age. Well, the machines are just easier.
It's that not appropriate for your age. And that's what, looking at these videos, these
sells them short.
These people are being told you're old, and the best exercise for you is one where you're sitting in a chair so you won't fall and hurt yourself. And our reaction to that is, no, they need to stand. They need to learn how to squat and deadlift so that they can get stronger. So if they fall or if they trip, they may not fall because they have better balance because they're stronger. And if they happen to do fall, they won't break a hip because they're stronger. I mean, i.e. they're stronger. Any way you put it, they're now stronger. Claire got a bone density scan, and it was good because she had been doing for almost a year and a half strength training twice a week. This is a woman with cerebral palsy who squats and deadlifts and presses and benches. And I don't make it any easier for her than my other clients.
As an older individual who might be on board with the idea of building strength, not only as a way to maintain muscle mass and capability as they grow older, but also interested in maintaining or building bone density, but maybe they're not into the idea of a barbell. They've heard too many people say, oh, that's going to be dangerous. And they're like, oh no, I'm totally down with getting stronger, but I just want to do it using the machines. What would you say to that person in regards to, I don't know that there's the same ability to build bone density in that situation. You certainly aren't training balance or getting any kind of practice, understanding how your body moves and adjusts to changes in balance in real world settings.
Yeah. I mean, that was my whole presentation that I did back in January, where I spoke just about that. I mean, sure, machines are fine for, I think rehab purposes, or if you're a bodybuilder. But other than that, I mean, we don't walk around extending our leg one leg at a time. We don't walk around
just like kicking people.
Yeah, don't like kicking people all the time. We don't sit all the time. We move, we bend over, we pick things up, we put things overhead, we pull things, we push things, we carry things. So we are full, we move our bodies in space constantly. Why would you train your bodies to move one leg at a time on a machine when that's not how we work and live in real life? It's okay if you don't have, if that's all you have. I say it's better than nothing. And I would rather have somebody pressing on a chest press machine or doing leg extensions if they have nothing else to do, rather than just walking. So if you're walking and we use the machines, sure. But eventually, if they can get off the machines, find someone, a coach who can teach them how to squat and teach them how to deadlift, they're going to be far better off. So, even if it's just picking up a box, I mean, I've taught that to people. I've gotten the fear of deadlifts out of people's heads by asking them just to pick up my plyo box. Well, go over, bend over and pick that up. And they do. And I say, see how you pick that up? That's all you're doing here. In fact, what you're doing here is training that movement you just did better. And then all of a sudden it makes sense. It's like, oh, I do that in my real life. Yes, let me show you how you can do it safely.
So along these lines too, like what a person believes about their own experience aging like the messages that are out there.
Yes.
And this idea, oh, you can't do as much or whatever. But there's, I think also, you know, as you get older, there's more aches and pains. So, I mean, that's a reality. But how you interpret those aches and pains and how a person allows that to affect their training, I think is something that comes up for older individuals. How do you see that with your older clients?
So, and
how do you address that?
I think you probably do the same thing I do. I just kind of shrug my shoulders. I'm terrible. I shrug my shoulders and I say, yeah. I said, it's uncomfortable. Well, this kind of bothers me. I said, well, is it sharp shooting, stabbing pain? Like you're going to vomit? Well, no. I said, okay, then you're fine. I mean, I don't allow them to experience something that's uncomfortable as a sign of I'm doing something wrong or I'm hurting myself. So I try to teach them how to, you know, when something's uncomfortable, I'll just ask them, well, what do you mean uncomfortable? Is it like an ache? Is it like you're stretching the muscle? Does it feel like you're kind of working it out? Yeah, that's what it feels like. And I say, okay, that's good. That's fine. That's what you want to feel. If someone says to me, I feel like someone's stabbing a knife through my eye every time I put my arm overhead, I go, then we're not going to do that. We're going to find something else to do. And I'll modify that exercise. And typically if I modify it, it's probably, that's what I should have done. I should have, you know, that's not quite, either they're not quite where they should be, or maybe it's just not going to be the right exercise at all for them, you know, ever. But trying to get them to understand that we all are going to experience some kind of ache or discomfort, that it's a part of it. And we can either choose to be weak and uncomfortable or strong and uncomfortable. And everybody always chooses strong and uncomfortable. And Steve,
uncomfortable keeps showing up there. Like, can we just get rid of that one?
Yeah, I have to give Steve credit for that. My client Steve, who said, you know, I can be. What do you say? Something about I can be sore and weak or sore and strong. And none of my older clients, and when I say older, I mean 65 and up, ever complain about things. Yeah. They may mention it to me. And if my expression is like, okay, well, you know, I'll say something like, well, we can, you know, do the top weight and then maybe take it down. Well, they'll say, well, let me see how it feels. So they're always willing to try and push through something. But I always make sure they understand that if there's pain involved and we learn what pain is, then we need to stop.
So kind of like what I'm hearing you say, which is pretty similar to what I do, is have conversations along the way that differentiate between a sensation that is uncomfortable, or maybe not pleasant,
right,
and something that's painful and potentially injurious. And so have that conversation, continue to have that conversation. You sleep on something funny overnight, you come in, something doesn't feel right, have a language to be able to talk about that. You know, like one of my kids was at the PT physical therapist after, you know, concussion protocol. And every day that she'd go in there, they had that, you know, like the smiley face VAS scale, you know, like, where are you on this scale today? Like, so to be able to say like, okay, well, you feel this sensation, maybe we're going to call it pain. Maybe we're going to call it discomfort. Where are you on 1 to 10? Like, are you the smiley face or are you like the, you know, like the crying emoji? Where are you on that scale? And then not like hearing what the client is saying, but not reacting to it. So acknowledging the sensation without sensationalizing the sensation, without being like, oh yeah, that's awful. Oh my gosh. You know, a lot of times I think someone might be looking for
validation,
a reaction from the coach. To sort of, well, okay, well then we don't have to do this today.
Absolutely.
But also, you know, kind of not being like a little neutral, acknowledging what they're saying, not overreacting to it. and then maybe suggesting, okay, well, let's just see. Let's see how it goes. We'll go through your warm up. If your last warm up weight doesn't feel right today, okay, we'll maybe come up with a different approach today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we won't do what was in the program for today. Being able to be a little bit flexible,
Yep.
And just seeing how it goes, because some days aren't going to be fabulous.
No, we do that with my younger clients. I mean, that's how I am with any of my clients.
So, but like we're talking about, like, are you going to train your older clients differently? Like, not necessarily. Exactly. Just like you're saying, we do that with younger clients too, because sometimes things are just too stressful.
Yeah, I say the same
job or family or whatever.
I don't. In fact, I think I'm harder on my older clients, because if I treat them like they're old, they're not going to respond to me, so they pretend that they're old. I can't do that. That's too much. I say, well, I'm talking, excuse me, but didn't you tell me you didn't want to be a weak old lady? Well, I did say that, but said so.
And that's a thing too, I think, with older clients, that sometimes a little bit different. An older client might need a little bit more time getting warmed up under the empty bar.
Sure.
It might not be your 2 sets of 5 with the bar before you start squatting. I've got a guy who likes to do his first set with the empty bar of 10. Mm-hmm. And that works really well for him. Like they're not to depth. Yeah. They it's just getting everything moving.
Right.
Getting the blood flowing, getting things warmed up. And that process can sometimes take a little bit longer with an older client, but younger clients have days like that too. So there are some things that may be more standard or typical for an older client, but they're not different necessarily from the way we might train a younger client, depending on who they are, depending on the condition in which they show up on any given day.
And, depending on the individual, I have clients who come, who train 3 days a week. I have clients who train 2 days a week. Those some who can train with a day off in between, and they recover just fine. Others need 2 days off. Typically, the older you are, the more recovery time you may need. But I have an online client I started working with back in May, and he was training twice a week. He worked with us in March, just one time with Diego, and then he decided to do some online coaching. And he was training twice a week because he's 60, and he just wanted to give himself, enough recovery time. And this is someone who's trained before. He's always been active. This is not someone who's just starting for the first time. But he'd always, hurt himself in the past. Always has a lot of injuries, knees always bother him. Just doing too much. So by the time we started working together, he was now down to once a week because things were hurting him so much. So when we got moving and we did a session on Zoom, walked to squat, we fixed his squat again, so his knees aren't bothering him anymore. They're feeling great now. I said, tell me what you were doing before. Like, why are you only training twice a week or once a week? Well, and he laid out his program. I said, okay, well, we're stopping there. No wonder you were only training once a week. You're just doing too much and you can't recover, just breaking your body down. Here's what we're going to do. We've been training 3 times a week. He squats twice a week. He has a light squat. And he has a heavy squat. And even the heavy squat still is just a top set and then some back offs. We deadlift once a week. He does press and bench, and those are great. And after a couple weeks of doing that, he wasn't sure if he could do 3 times a week. I got a really nice email saying, I have had the most energy I've had in years. And he's doing more. He's doing 3 times a week now, but he's doing less work.
Right.
He's getting stronger. He's feeling better, so it's a combination of, for him, more, but a better program was what he needed, and he needed to follow that. And once he started actually following that, he feels great. He has days where he feels so good that he does a lot of
so
he's very active.
Do you mean like prior to that he was like lifting 5 days or 6 days?
He was lifting 1 day a week. because
but you said he had gotten there because he had.
Yeah, because he'd doing goblet squats and RDLs and push-ups and this and this and this. And
like all 6,
7 exercises on like one day, and like beating himself up on like, on a day and then doing that multiple times a week. So just and then not having, the form was off too. That's where a lot of the knee pain came from. It was just form. But, he can train 3 times a week. How can he do that? Well, his program is such that he can recover just fine. But here's somebody who, thought he could only train twice a week, and then it was only down to once a week, and now he's doing 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. So, and this, again, it's not unique to older trainees, right? But you need to be, mindful of recovery. Mm-hmm. Older trainees may need longer, may need 72 hours instead of 48.
Yep.
But just programming in smart ways to accommodate for that.
That's it.
But that happens with younger clients too, depending on life stresses or other activities, competing, athletic activities, sports, stresses, whatever.
Yeah.
A younger adult might need more recovery time as well.
Yeah.
So what do you see in terms of nutrition then, as long as we're talking recovery? How does that play out differently or the same for older individuals?
So I think, older individuals are going to need more protein. I think in general, any of our clients always come in with they're lacking protein, especially the ladies, especially the women.
Yeah.
And older women, I know, just looking at in regards to my mom, they don't eat a lot. My mom eats like a bird. She may eat more now that she's lifting, but she still doesn't eat a lot. She's never been a big breakfast person. She'll have lunch, she'll have dinner, but she's not, she doesn't think or worry about her meals per se. And I do find that there's not this kind of sense of, I'm going to eat 3 meals a day with my snacks and make sure that I have this much protein. They just kind of eat,
Yeah.
But I try to encourage them to eat more protein. I don't know how many of them really do, but they're never lacking energy when they come in. They're usually, until I see that where they're not doing well, they're not recovering from workout to workout, but they all are. They're also not really pushing themselves that much too. So the weight's not that heavy, especially now since they've just gotten back from, being from the lockdown. But I don't find myself spending a lot of time on nutrition with my older clients.
Yeah.
Unless they ask me to help them. I think
yeah, I guess I would say probably similar. In general, a lot of the people that you and I are working with need encouragement to eat more protein.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one thing I see sometimes with older individuals that falls under the recovery category just is sleep. As people get older, sleep becomes more fragile. Older people are more likely to be awake for periods of time in the middle of the night, have disrupted sleep. I always have my clients kind of check in with me ahead of time. Hey, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night, or I kept waking up, or, that sort of thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that their training session is going to turn out one way or another, but it's just nice to know that ahead of time going into it. Just that maybe recovery wasn't as full as it might have been. But that's just a thing that I notice, with older individuals. Not to say, and again, that happens with younger people too.
Oh yeah.
But there's some different tendencies in terms of recovery for older people.
I think with in regards to the clients I train, the sleep, I don't hear sleep as much of a factor for them. They also simply because they're not, when they come in to train, they just enjoy doing it.
That's because you've got your group of ladies and it's their social club. It's their social time.
They're not worried about the weight. I tell them what to put in the bar and they do it. They have no clue. They just kind of say, here, here's my book. What do I do? And I tell them a number and they write it down. They do it. and then they forget and they do something else. And then I, yell at them. But my mom, she takes her medicinal marijuana, so she sleeps like a queen.
This is all good to know.
She just takes a little bit of that tincture and lights out. So that helps her sleep. But yeah, I think it's more my younger clients who, when they come in, they'll say to me, I got 4 hours of sleep, and then we have to have the talk. But sleep, it doesn't matter whether you're 25, 35, 65, 75, you need to sleep. You need to make sure that you're sleeping and that you're eating. And then you have to be mindful of that active recovery, what you're doing outside the gym, because they will, if they're doing something outside. I remember when Susan was bagging leaves a few months ago, back in the fall. She came in, she was quite sore because she was bagging a lot of leaves, and she had all this energy to do it. But the downside was that she kind of, put a lot of energy out, and was a little sore, when she came in the next time to train. But she said, but it's all good. I mean, she said, I can't believe I bagged, 5 bags of leaves, and my husband didn't help me, kind of thing. So there's that trade-off of like, I did it myself, but I'm a little sore because of it. I wrote down some others. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. Go ahead. Because I had one other weird observation.
So no, go ahead. You do the observation before I move on to it, because I want to talk about some other skills that we might not do with our younger clients that we do with our older clients.
Oh, right. Yeah. And this is just like an odd thing. And I mean, I think this is true when I work with women, but also women of an older generation. One thing that is difficult for them a lot of times is like the hips back, the hips back with the squat or with the deadlift, just because culturally a lot of women of a certain age were taught like, oh, you don't stick your butt out. That's not polite. Like, so just the way, like I was me trying to teach my mom how to squat, knees out, hips back. Like the first couple times she was just like, really? Like embarrassed about like, oh, I'm going to stick my butt out. Like that's not polite.
That's funny, because I'll use the word Playboy bunny, and typically the ladies will get it. They'll go, see, like, stick your butt out like a Playboy bunny, and they'll go,
that's the thing my mom like associates it with, right?
Okay.
Yeah, where she's like not comfortable. Like that took a little bit of, and that's like I think a generational. And maybe women more than men, but a generational thing too.
Interesting. I've never experienced that. I'll pull that term. I'll use that. That term, Playboy bunny, and usually the ladies will get it. I go, oh,
yeah.
I go,
well, like I'll say stripper butt, but I only say that to a certain age group.
Okay. That's interesting. I've never had anybody. Usually, the only people with a hard time moving their hips back are my guys. That's hard. So if I say,
no, it's not hard, like physically hard. But it's like,
like.
Maybe not.
Let me clutch my pearls hard.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. Yeah. No, I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
I only had one of my.
I've had that enough times that it strikes me as a little bit of a pattern.
I guess the women I have are, they don't care.
I don't know. They're coming in on their medicinal tincture. So
they've all been like, they're all like, hippies from another generation of just like, carefree and do what they want. I gotta watch them.
So you just need a June cleaver or something.
I do. I've never had one of those. Definitely not. Can't see Jan clutching her pearls. So the other skills that I like to teach, and I don't. It's one of the first skills I taught to Anita, who was probably my oldest client. When she started with me, so she'll be 80 this year. I believe she was 77. When Anita started with me, she was coming from physical therapy, and she came to me because her daughter wanted to get her stronger to help her with her knee pain. So she wanted to do her PT exercises that she had been doing with PT. So I said, okay, great. And she came in that one day and I said, okay, let's do your PT work. Go ahead and lie down. And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean lie down? I said, well, we're going to do your glute bridges and all your PT work. We need to do them on the floor. She said, I don't do them on the floor. I said, well, where do you do them? She said, I do them on my bed. I said, well, I don't have a table. I don't have a table in here. So we're going to have to do the floor. She said, I don't get down to the floor. I said, well, I guess we're going to have to learn. So one of the first skills that I taught her was how to get down to the floor and how to get back up before she even squatted or deadlifted or anything, because I wanted her she wanted to do her PT work. And I wanted her to continue some of the work that she was doing because it was good, but we had to get her to the floor. So we taught her how to get down and get back up. And that became a staple of her program. And
like to a younger individual, that might sound useless or crazy, but that is a huge skill and it can be life-saving. And not only that, but to be able to ideally get up off the floor without using hands. And I actually, I had incorporated that with a bunch of individuals, just as a skill, either as a warm-up or, if I'm doing more of a small group fitness class as opposed to barbell stuff, there's almost always some kind of get up off the floor. And I actually had a woman who was in her 50s came back and told me a story. She was working in a framing store and she had fallen and cut her hand on the glass of the frame, and it was bleeding profusely enough that she had to apply pressure. But here she is on the floor, not able to use her hands because she's staunching the bleeding and has to get up off the floor. And she's like, I could do that because we trained that. It's that's kind of an extreme example, but it's that's frightening for an older individual. Absolutely. If you think you don't have the ability to get your own body up off the floor. Some of it is strength related, but like you're saying, it's also a skill you have to practice. It's a skill. And before Anita even, like I said, before we even got her squatting to a box, and that's all she did when she first started, was just learn how to sit to a box and stand. We had her getting down the floor and getting up because I wanted her to do her PT work. She wanted to do it. Well, I only have a floor. I don't have a bed or a table, a PT table. So that skill I've done, and I've taught that in my basic training program, my kind of boot camp class that I do. So any of my clients who took that class, regardless of age, got down the floor and got up. That was kind of part of it. And crawling too. They learned how to crawl. I had a mat. We would crawl, we would roll. So learning how to get down and then also roll, being okay rolling. That was something that was kind of already built into my program. So my mom did it when she started the basic training program. And then she started doing the barbell program, but Deb and Susan had never done that. When they started with me, it was just the barbell program. Well, fast forward to the pandemic, and now they can't come in, and I'm doing Zoom classes, online, and they're joining in to do the Zoom classes. And part of my program was we would do, we've been doing the strength circuit, and then we do some conditioning. Well, I have a little space to work, right? So you're in your living room. We do a lot of getting down the floor and getting up. We do a lot of inchworms. We do a lot of mountain climbers. We do a lot of, exercises that don't require a lot of space. So Deb and Susan are now at home, lying down and getting up, learning how to do that. And when they came in after 2.5 months of doing that to start training again, they said to me, Susan said, I'm a whole new woman. She said, I can't believe how easy it is now for me to get down to the floor and get up. Yeah, that's great.
She demonstrated an inchworm for me, and in front of my mother's. They were social distancing one day at my mom's. My mom was on the porch. They were on the front yard. I pull up, and I was going to kind of hang out with them too and be a part. And Susan sees me, and she starts to do inchworms on the wood chips of my parents' front lawn, and I just started laughing. But they made so much progress with that skill just from doing it over and over and over again. I think part of the reason that they could do it too is they had been training. So there's that too. They've been doing it for a year and a half, 2 years. And now they're at home learning other skills. So now they have everything. And in fact, one of my clients recently came to me, she's 60, and she said to me, Emily, can we go over how to get down the floor and how to get up? Because I'm finding at home, I'm crawling around, and I think I want to be able to do it better. So we went over to the turf and we practiced getting down the floor and getting back up. And within 5 minutes, the flow was much better. And she was figuring out how to move her body around on the ground, how to adjust her legs in such a way that she could use her legs, use her hips to get up. So you can't discount that kind of work. And it can go both ways. You teach it first, and then you get strong, and then you start to do some strength training, or you've been strength training and now you have to work on this skill, and wow, it's there. And it's just a matter of practice with anything.
The thing about the getting down, getting up, the thing about crawling is it's like, those are all very natural movements that people have when they're young.
Yep.
And there comes a time where your life is really, I don't know, for a lot of people, a lot more sedentary. They only have to get down as far as a chair. And so why go all the way down to the floor unless you happen to be, I don't know, watching a movie on the floor or something. But, like the first time I have somebody do something like that in a small group or whatever, you can see the thought process. And I actually have to explain to them, there's a couple ways your body might figure out how to get up.
Right.
Like there are people who will crisscross their ankles and stand up on both legs simultaneously.
Yep.
I've seen people who have like the most ridiculously, in my opinion, flexible knees I've ever seen. And they'll like just kind of go from like their rear end on the floor right behind their heels.
Yep.
Like a real ass to the grass kind of squat and stand up from that.
Yep.
I got to roll to one side. And then I tell people, if you roll to one side to get up, then make sure you practice rolling to the other side too, so that you get some, so there's like a relearning process.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about it as a skill. The brain has to kind of sort that out.
Yep.
Again, like it did the first time when you were a toddler.
Yeah.
And the same thing with crawling. Crawling is really interesting because people aren't used to moving, opposite arm, opposite leg.
Yeah.
They really, a lot of people really have to think that through.
Yeah.
And then once they get that, it's so fun to have them crawl backwards because then their brain just completely melts.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you watch somebody just learning how to skip. I mean, how often did we skip when we were children? And now we're adults, and that's part of my warm up, in the boot camp class. And you see them skipping, and they're skipping same arm as leg. And you're like, no, opposite arm to leg. And they have to think about what does opposite arm to leg feel like.
But like these skills that you're talking about, like one of the things I think that's really good about barbell training or strength training for older individuals is that it allows them to gain more confidence in their ability and in their body. And these other skills that you're mentioning, getting up off the floor, crawling, skipping, they're fun ways to use your body. It's a nice connection to maintain between your brain and your body and how you're able to use it in the world. But it's just, and mental acuity that goes along with that.
Yep.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. That was, with Claire, I taught her, the reason she came to me in the first place was she's a nurse. She's retired now, but she was a nurse at Hopkins, and she has cerebral palsy, and she'd fallen quite a few times at work, and hurt her knee and hurt her shoulder. And so finally, Bob brought her in and said, and it was like, you need to get her stronger. If she gets stronger, she might trip, but she's not going to fall, and she may not hurt herself. So, and she hasn't fallen. And I can't think of the last time. I think it was before she came in to see me. So, but I taught her, we worked on getting down on the floor and getting up. Now she couldn't get down the floor. So we have these mats. So I basically raised the floor up almost to her knee level. And we worked on just kind of getting to the mats on her hands and knees, and then coming up, and then slowly taking the mats away, opening the mats until the full mat was on the floor, completely open. But that was very scary and very nerve-wracking for her, because the last time she was on the ground, she hadn't been able to get up.
Yeah.
And she had hurt herself. So getting somebody to overcome that fear of being down there is absolutely huge. And when they discover that now they're back up and that they can get back down and get up on their own, they are much more, willing to do even more.
Yeah. And I think the thing, like for both of us, like we recognize that that's really crucial for older individuals, but that's one of the things I think that motivates us as coaches to be able to help people build that kind of confidence in their bodies as they're aging, to not think of their body as something that's going to give out on them or that's deteriorating, without them having any control over it, but like kind of putting them back in charge of that whole process.
Yes.
It's cool to watch.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Having control over your body and being in control and
watching their confidence grow as they realize, like, I can do this now, and I wasn't able to before. And it's the kind of thing, like, I guess I said this already, but like to a younger listener who takes for granted the fact that they can get up and down off the floor, it sounds like not a big deal. And I haven't been there myself, but I've seen enough clients struggle with that I can see that is a big issue for older individuals, and to help them be able to maintain the strength and the skill to be able to help themselves in situations where they may have fallen. It's like, I guess to a younger individual, you hear this conversation and probably what comes to mind is that dumb commercial from whenever it was. Oh, I've fallen and I can't get up, right? But that's like a real thing. If it weren't a real thing, they wouldn't have made that like clicker.
No, my mother tells a story of of her grandmother, so my great grandmother, falling in her house and lying there for hours and hours and hours until finally someone found her. And she was okay, but she couldn't get up, and she didn't try to call anybody. Like, she didn't try to drag herself to a phone. And they said, Bobby, why didn't you try to call anybody? Oh, she said, I didn't want to bother anybody.
Oh boy.
It's like, oh my God, the Jewish mother guilt is just, it's like, it's so big. But yeah, she's lying there for hours. It's like, no, my mother's not going to be that. She's not going to lie down on the floor, and then tell me, well, I didn't want to bother you. She's going to get her ass back up off the floor because I've taught her how to do that. So to wrap up, yes, we do not train our older clients any differently than our younger clients, with the exception of course, any modifications that we need to make. Perhaps they don't train as often. They don't do as much volume, but they still train the lifts as much as they can, and they're zero excuses. Zero excuses when they come in. And they're just a joy to train too. I think I love coaching all my clients, but there's just something very special in my heart for my clients who are 60 and up.
Yeah. Because you see it, like you get to vicariously experience how empowering strength training can be for someone.
It's awesome to watch them literally like move bars around and carry their benches around and set their racks up for themselves and check their books, their log books, and get their shoes on. These are women who, when they were 20 and 25, they probably had no desire to do this. This wasn't even on their radar. Because these are women who were 70. So when they were 25, what year was it for them? I mean, my mom was in 68. She was 18. This is something, she wasn't thinking about this. She was thinking about buying the Beatles album and, a couple of years before that, she was at a Beatles show screaming her head off. So, this thought of training, and I'm a female training, and I'm an older woman training. It's very empowering for them, and it's empowering for, definitely for their daughters, for their, and for Susan, for Jay. He loves the fact that his mom does this. Yeah. So it's very exciting to see them so excited about what they can do, and the acknowledgement that this type of work is good for them.
And that's an interesting point, I think, that you're kind of getting at there, which is a lot of times, and this is again stereotypical, I guess, like the way women are raised of a particular generation, and for sure. But this idea that doing something like going to the gym or strength training would be selfish. They're doing it for themselves. But what you're describing, what we're talking about here, is what a gift that is for the people in their family.
Yes.
Like when older trainees take the time to get stronger, and if maybe even if they have family that they're still caring for or other obligations, and if they maybe were culturated to think that that's being selfish, like recognizing that what they're really doing is not only giving themselves the opportunity to build strength and confidence, but they're giving their family members a real gift and a sense of assurance, reassurance that they're going to be capable and safe. And that's huge too.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I wish, I always say, I wish I had more. And it's, plenty of my younger clients really would love their parents to do this. And they work on needling them, and some of them, do want to do it, or if they live closer, they would do it. And others, they're still stuck in their head of, no, I'm not, I'm too old for that. That's not something that and the excuses are many. And, I just I'll say to my client, well, you can, lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I mean, that's how it goes. And I do find that, that older women are more inclined and more apt to want to do this and want to try it than the older men. Like my father, if he can't do everything, he doesn't want to do any of it, even though, because he used to be able to do it. And it's more like, no, I think I know what I can do. You don't need to tell me what to do. Or no, I don't need that. I've done that. I've been there, done that. The women, they're more coachable too, And so, in a sense, I'd rather have my older female trainees than my older men, because they're stuck more in their ways and not as.
It probably depends on
flexible. Yeah,
maybe that's flexible. Just your mom as opposed to your dad or something. But
but it's
I guess I haven't really had that.
No, not in your case. No, not you at all. You've been very lucky. And like I said, I wish I had. I wish I had more men, but the ones I've met are a little more stubborn and stuck in their ways. So you kind of end up going, fine, you know what? Do what you want. I don't care.
Well, that was you with your dad. I think you're just talking about your dad.
It's just my dad. All right. So next week we're off from podcasting.
Yeah, next week I'm going to put into practice the modified lifting while on vacation. Yeah, I'm not going to.
I can't wait to hear that. We're definitely going to talk about that.
That will be crazy.
So this will so in lieu of a newer podcast, we're going to share with you a podcast we did a while back in June, and I feel so bad for saying it was back in June, but we interviewed our awesome coach Jay Mund, whose mother trains with us. We were talking about her, Susan, and Rebecca and I did an interview with Jay right around his birthday. It might have been on his birthday. I can't remember. So we'll have that podcast. After the podcast about coaching the older lifter. So tune in for our interview with Jay. Again, it is from back in June. So we were just coming out of lockdown at the time, but it should be a good one. And we will return in a couple weeks with a new podcast with Rebecca after her trip to the beach. And we can hear all about how she survived.
And hopefully didn't get sunburned.
And hopefully didn't get sunburned. Just make sure just pack your sunscreen.
Yeah.
Pack your sunscreen. All right. And as always, please send us your questions or comments or stories about your own training. info@5by3.com is our email. We'd love to hear from you. And we look forward to tuning in with you in a couple weeks for our next podcast. Thanks, everybody, and have a great week.
All right. See ya.
Bye. Thanks for listening to 5by3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5by3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.